Today, we can add to the list of principled resignations 21 people from Doge. People who had been held over from the U.S. Digital Service because they were expected to work with Elon Musk's team at Doge. 21 of them resigned today saying, quote, "We will not use our skills as technologists to compromise core government systems, to jeopardize American sensitive data, or to dismantle critical public services. We will not lend our expertise to carry out or legitimize Doge's actions." Again, 21 members of the Doge service resigning today. The thing that is emerging, we're now 5 weeks and a day into this thing. The thing that is emerging as the real weak card in their hand, and I don't know if we should have known to expect this or not, but it's just becoming more and more increasingly obvious with each passing day. Their weakness is that they kind of suck at what they're trying to do. I'm sorry to use that phrase, but they really do appear to be terrible at their intentional actions, right? And, you know, you don't want like a surgical robot to be terrible at what it does. You don't want your letter carrier or your research scientist or your park ranger to be terrible at what they do. We need those folks to be good at what they do, and by and large, they are. The person you actually want to be terrible at his job is the guy who thinks it's his job to destroy your country's government. And Elon Musk is turning out to be very much up to that task. I mean, amid all the pushback of all these various kinds, the best assistance the pushback is getting from the Trump and Elon Musk side is that Elon Musk really does appear to have no idea what he's doing, and it is showing more and more every day. And so it is really hurting what he is trying to do, which is so sad. Just take, for example, a short version of this saga from the last few days of Elon Musk initiating this email to all federal workers, including, hopefully, some people who no longer have access to their email because he ordered that they be put on leave and locked out of government computer systems. Oops, but that's how he's trying to contact them now, by sending them emails to email addresses he won't allow them to check. Awesome. But this email, as you know, told everybody that they needed to give Elon Musk a list of the things they had done in the past week, or else. If they didn't send him this list, that would be taken as a resignation. And immediately we saw multiple government agencies tell their workers, do not do this. Do not respond to this. The Defense Department, the FBI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the State Department, the Homeland Security Department, the Education Department, the Commerce Department, the FDIC, the IRS, the Energy Department, FEMA, the CDC, the NIH, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, our beloved NOAA. They all told the people who work at those agencies, do not respond to this. And in that list, I just mentioned a few different components of the Department of Health and Human Services. Just looking at that one agency for a second to get a sense of how this played in an agency that is now run by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I mean, look at how this played there. Elon Musk sends this like middle of the night insane email to everybody who works at HHS, everybody who works in the rest of the government. At HHS, they initially told their employees Sunday morning that they needed to respond to this email and do what Elon Musk said. Then an hour later, an email went out from the Trump-appointed acting director of the NIH, which is part of Health and Human Services. And that person told all NIH employees, oh, no, do not respond to this. Then a few hours after that, HHS, as an overall agency, told all employees, actually pause, maybe hold just a second, we're not sure. The ultimate advice given to people who work at HHS was that they could respond to Elon Musk's threatening email if they wanted to, but they didn't have to. And if they did, quote, do not identify by name or title any other HHS employees with whom you have been working. Do not identify by case name or otherwise matters you are working on. Do not identify any specific grants or contracts or any specific grantees or contractors. If you are engaged in any scientific experiments, research, or reviews, do not provide information that could allow anyone to identify the precise nature of your work. The advice ended with this, quote, assume that what you write will be read by malign foreign actors and tailor your response accordingly. That's how well this thing is going. The Office of Personnel Management, which is the entity under which Musk sent out this insane, like, apparent prank email, the Office of Personnel Management then tried to sort of cancel Musk's threatening email, saying, oh, we can't believe anybody took that seriously. Why did you think you had to do that? Obviously, complying with that request would be totally voluntary. You don't have to respond. And if you don't send it back, that won't be taken as your resignation. Where did you get that idea? That, forget everything we just said, email from the Office of Personnel Management appeared to be a knock-on effect, sort of a side effect requirement that they didn't foresee that had been set in motion thanks to another legal entanglement the Musk gang got themselves into when they set up this dodgy government-wide email system that enabled this nonsense in the first place. As part of setting up that email system, they apparently promised that any email they sent on that dodgy system would never involve compelled compliance to respond from government workers. So then when they told government workers, you'll be fired if you don't respond, they had to say, just kidding. It was a weekend. It was late. We were a little, you know. Then Elon Musk thereafter said, no, I mean it. You do have to respond. I mean, if you were like in a grunge band in 1977 and all of you did like a lot of drugs, if one of you tried to fire the other members of the band, the rest of the band wouldn't take you seriously trying to do it this way. And here is the president's top campaign donor saying this is how he's firing the whole federal government. Really?